And joining us now, NK Seeds soybean product manager Eric Miller is with us. Eric, great to have you on, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well, Jesse. How are you?
I am good. Thanks for the time today. Let's jump in. Let's talk soybeans. And, with the late planting we saw this year in many areas, that soybean crop is a little bit behind, but we've seen plenty of heat and dryness start to come into many areas of the growing regions across the U.S. And I know just looking at this year's soybean crop, things still look good, but there are a lot of things that our growers are starting to pay closer attention to. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I do agree, Jesse. It's been a bit of a high stress year with late planting, wet soils to begin. Now we're getting hit with some heat and dryness in certain regions. So a 1-2 punch in a lot of ways, and getting out and scouting those fields and seeing some of the potential issues out there is certainly one way to get ahead of some perils that we could potentially treat with a fungicide. At this season, the replant decisions have been made. The acres that are out there will be, and we'll see where we end up. But that's where we are. It was a tough spring, and now we're getting a growing season that hasn't tossed us a lot of softballs.
Well, I know you mentioned fungicides, and we're getting into that application time frame right now. And obviously, watching some of those early season diseases, some of those have been delayed with the late planting, as well as some other pests. But as you just look at some of these early season diseases, what stands out to you right now?
Yeah. The early season diseases, some of them can show up in this time frame. So if we look at the Pythium, Phytophthora, SDS, hitting those last two specifically, Phytophthora can come on late season. We think about the wet soils that we planted into, and then of course in the SDS world, planting into a cool, wet in those regions that were planted early can bring on a late season SDS that may start to show up on this time frame. And we've got a great set of products to handle Phytophthora. Looking back at the lineup that we planted here in 2022, and then we'll have for 2023, calling out three products in the Phytophthora world. We think about NK14W6 E3, NK29 Z4 E3, and NK31 M7 E3, both with stacked, or all three rather, with stacked Phytophthora genes to help control that early season disease.
Eric, I know as well, soybean cyst nematode (SCN) is a big issue among our growers across the country, and I think that's something else that we really need to keep our eyes on and get out and scout for before it's too late.
Yeah, that's right. The cyst, the proliferation of them, they've spread into northern geographies and east and western areas they haven't been historically. Certainly, planting a variety with cyst protection, and when you can, an alternative cyst such as Peking. We have a couple of great products in our portfolio, namely NK14W6 that I just mentioned on the Phytophthora side, but controlling that pest can obviously lead to infection and then SDS later in the season as well. So it's an important one to scout and understand what fields it's present in, and then what levels it's present in those fields to understand what best methods aside from varietal selection to help treat.
Eric, talking to growers across the region, across our country, I mean, I haven't heard a ton of weed pressure here early on. I've heard of a little bit, but nothing has stood out to me. Have you heard anything different when it comes to weed pressure here so far this season?
Yeah, weeds are always an issue, regionally, depending on showers and planting conditions. Were residuals applied? Were they applied timely? Getting to this part of the season, we think about the applications of those auxin herbicides such as Enlist E3 and then glufosinate as well. And yes, certainly there are weed issues across. We're dealing with resistant weeds, more resistance every year. But when we look at the Enlist E3 system, it's providing a lot of flexibility, a lot of utility to growers that want to make later applications in the season to control those tough broadleafs and tank mix with the glufosinate opportunity. And we see that Enlist trait growing rapidly across the country, Jesse, just because of those reasons I mentioned. We also have grown our proprietary lineup in Enlist for 2023, and our NK genetics are performing very, very well in the marketplace. and that trait could reach north of 50% plus of planted acres in 2023.
Eric as well. I know some farmers have dealt with some hail damage here this year. We've seen some of these pop up showers, thunderstorms, these convective thunderstorms hit isolated areas and cause some damage. If farmers have seen hail damage to some of their soybean crop, what are some things they need to watch out for at this point as we go through the growing season? Does it have a chance to recover if we've seen some leaf damage?
Yeah, it's really a case by case basis. These crops are resilient. Corn and soybeans will come back from a lot. All depends where the growing point is. Is the cotyledon still attached? What growth stage is that crop in? Really recommend walking these fields with your retailer and understanding the options, given the calendar, given the plant stage, and the percent of damage across that field.
Well, Eric, fantastic stuff. Any other final thoughts you want to share with us here today? Just any other soybean tips we haven't covered before we run out of time?
Yeah, certainly, Jesse. I would just recommend growers that want to learn more about our Field Forge series quickly. It's a performance based series. It's our top products with 28 soybean products in the list, 14 E3 and 14 Extend Flex. Go to nkfieldforge.com for more information on that performance series. It's in year two. We've seen a lot of success there. And then also general product information around nkseeds.com.
Well, we appreciate the time with that NK Seeds soybean product manager, Eric Miller. Thanks so much for joining us today, Eric, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Jesse.